Good evening. So in the last few months, since I bought this Saito FA270 twin cylinder engine, I've been doing a lot of research on the larger Saito twins and trying to find as much information on them as I can. And I do this with most all engines I purchase or I'm looking to purchase. I first try to do as much research as I can, try to find as much information on them as possible. And as many of you know, it's just really not all that easy sometimes, because you have to either jump to forums to try to see what people have posted about the engines, or because very few engine manufacturers have actually an engine timeline or history at all. I think OS's site that's no longer active had the best information because they actually had a manufacturing timeline and some other information. But all that aside, I have found some information on these large Saito twins I would like to share with everybody. Now granted, both of these engines are discontinued and not available anymore, but that's kind of part of the point of this. So this first engine here is my Saito FA270T engine. This engine here is a Saito FA300TL engine. Now the 270T came out roughly around, I think it was maybe 1987. There were two variants of this, I believe, maybe three, but I'm only aware of two off the top of my head now. The first was a Mark 1, which this is not a Mark 1. This is a Mark 2. The Mark 1 was, and I'll put a picture up so you can see what the Mark 1 looked like, but it had different heads on it, and the heads, the intake manifolds came out from the top, and maybe even the bottom, maybe the intake and exhaust were from the front and the back. But like I said, I'll put a picture up here so you can see it. This is a Mark II engine. Now as you can see on the Mark II engine, exhaust and intake are both on the back side of the engine. Now the thing about this particular engine is that the carb, this is the top of the engine, the carb is facing upward, and they have this nice velocity stack on it. Well, I guess there were some complaints from customers saying, you know, well, when we go to try and put this engine in a plane, this velocity stack and the carb is, you know, up against the cowling of the engine, and it doesn't, you know, suck real good there, or you have to put holes in the top. So they changed subsequent engines after that, and that's kind of what I'm going to get to here. The Saito 270T and the Saito 300T, I think the 300T, I can't find any real information on that at all. It's hard to determine, but this one I am certain, the 300T, I'm certain there were three versions of this. The first version followed on the heels of this Mark II version. And the very first version of this had the carb upright, in an upright position like this also. And that was just the Saito FA300T. This particular engine is a Saito FA300TL. Now what they did between the TL and the T is, you can see the 270 here has an upright carb, and the intake manifolds are different. They go through the engine mount bracket. This TL engine, what they basically did was they said, well, if people are complaining about the carb being on top, we're just going to invert the carb. So when they inverted the carb on this, it changed the shape, size of these intake manifolds. So that's why if you have a Saito FA270T Mark II or even a Mark I, you're probably not going to find replacement intake manifolds. And the reason why that's important is those of you that have shopped for these engines or looked at many pictures of them on eBay or whatever, it seems like every single one of these things I see, there's something wrong with the intake manifolds. They're damaged, they're dented, or they're crushed. In fact, this one, the 270 I've got, has got a dent on it too. So the first thing I did when I bought this was I went searching trying to find parts for this thing. Well, they're non-existent because this is the Mark II, and this was the 270 was fairly quickly discontinued, I believe, once the 300 came out. And then, of course, when the 300 TL came out with the inverted carb, the 270 was a dinosaur. So the 300 TL intake manifolds will not work with any version of the 270T engine. Now, this is not the final version of the 300 either. They also went from this 300 TL to a 300T TDP engine, which basically was dual plugs, because this engine does not have dual plugs, and they totally got away from these intake manifolds and a single carb. In fact, here's the picture of what a TDP looks like. It's got dual carbs that each come out, each carb is connected directly to the intake manifold, and there's just a linkage right where the carb, the center of the engine where the carb used to be, that actuates the throttle lever on both of those engines. So if you're in the market for looking for parts for the 300, don't even bother looking for the parts for any parts for the 270, because they're just non-existent, especially the ones that get damaged the most, which for whatever reason seems to be the intake manifolds. You're not going to find them. So kind of one of the reasons why I'm talking about this is I've got two of these 300 TLs right here. This one the carb is removed from, and the reason the carb is off is because, well, guess what? The frickin' intake manifolds are destroyed. Well, this one is still usable. It's not. It's dented and it looks gross. This one is crushed. And like I said just a few minutes ago, I don't understand why it is, what's wrong with the design of these engines, but you know, at least half of the ones you see for sale have got some kind of problem with the intake manifold. It's dented, damaged, crushed. I don't understand how that happens. But the bottom line is, this is a 300 TL. The intake manifolds for the 300 TL are not, I repeat, not interchangeable with the intake manifolds of either the Saito 270T, Mark I, or Mark II engines. Luckily for me, I was able to find a new pair of these intake manifolds for the TL engine so that I can get this other 300T back to an operational state. But this has been, well, probably not so short, a lesson in some Saito history on some of these larger twin cylinder engines of theirs.